"You have the job," said the man with eyes colder than the edge of a Sicilian dagger. Isabella's heart skipped a beat. Standing in the dim foyer of a Florence villa, opulently decorated, yet cloaked in shadows, as if secrets lingered within its very walls. All she sought was a chance to provide for her son, and the ad for a nanny seemed the answer. But nothing about this assignment felt ordinary. The pen she used to sign the papers felt heavier, significant beyond its ink. Isabella Romano, once a thriving art historian, was now a woman underestimated by life's precarious turns. Once infatuated lovers and admirers were replaced by an insistent landlord in suspicious utility companies. The one-bedroom apartment she lived in was full of boxed memories of auctions and gallery openings, a life traded for cradle rocks and quiet tears on lonely nights. "Marco's unusual," the man said, breaking a beat of silence, his voice as alluringly smooth as an expensive wine, but with a full-bodied gravity that demanded respect. "Lorenzo Vivaldi, the employer and head of the clandestine Vivaldi family. We expect the utmost discretion." A sudden shiver ran through Isabella as she glanced through a tall, narrow window. Outside, the rain drummed rhythmically on the hood of a black car parked strategically in the entrance. It was the same car she had seen at the cafe, always parked yet never arriving nor departing. A motif of continuity, as untilled as the umbrella of influence the Vivaldis wielded. In the days that followed, the mansion became both her refuge and her cage. Marco, the child, was indeed peculiar sweet, but with a glint of somber wisdom not fit for his 7 years. He played amongst opulent rooms filled with relics of a bygone era, darting like a phantom, always seeking Isabella's comfort. But serenity crumbled the moment Isabella opened Marco's school notebook. On one of the lined pages, in erratic handwriting, were names of people she did not recognize, alongside two she knew too well, Lorenzo Vivaldi and Ariana Romano, her sister. Her mind spun a carousel of distressing possibilities. She gasped, audible only to the confines of the empty library, dust-mottled sunbeams descending like silent reproaches. An immense weight settled over her like a veil of mariner fog, unavoidable and opaque, veiling every intention she thought was pure. Her sister's fate entangled in the dangerous game she never wanted to play. Isabella's quiet life had been punctuated by moments of humiliating embarrassment, of hand-me-down pride shrouded beneath her family's cone of silence. But this hit differently. She felt caged, scrutinized by faceless oversight. Lorenzo's presence was like smoke swirling in a mirrored nightclub, threat veiled as a hedonistic promise. As days pressed forward, Lorenzo's confidence only seemed to grow, and with it, the forceful allure he exuded. His footsteps echoed down hallways, commanding attention like a conductor leading a tragic symphony. "Tell me, Isabella," Lorenzo's voice cut through another uneasy dinner, shadowed by candlelit elegance. "What do you think about our world?" "I see complexity wrapped in mysteries," she said, choosing her words with care, akin to a diplomat negotiating an uneasy truce, "and a web I'm not meant to understand." Their gazes locked a dance of cautious spears within the chilly air between them, pooling with unspoken words. Her fear of Lorenzo shifted subtly, becoming something she hadn't anticipated, reluctant admiration. The greater his world of influence loomed before her, the clearer her own silhouette became amid the shadows, revealing something formidable within herself. During a rare stolen moment of solitude, she unearthed an old family photograph hidden beneath a loose floorboard in Marco's room. In it, her sister Ariana and Lorenzo stood together, arms wrapped around a child she had not seen, a chilling mirror image of Marco. Her heart drummed an ancient rhythm as old as her family's roots. The truth unfurled before her like the papery bark of an ancient olive tree, telling stories through knots and twists only the deeply rooted could comprehend. When Isabella confronted Lorenzo, she found him seated in an armchair by the ballroom's expansive windows, the crystal whiskey glass clinking softly as a cold ring tapped its surface, the sound both unsettling and undeniably intimate. "You've protected him," she whispered, her voice barely hers, woven with threads of gratitude and unmistakable undercurrents of something deeper. "No one harms what I've sworn to keep safe," Lorenzo replied, a vow as solid as the oak of the chair he seemed born to. "Especially not Marco." As twilight descended, softening the glow of city lights that peeked through the rain-drizzled glass, Isabella felt the gravity of her choice. She entered this grand scheme with curated caution, but found herself gripped by an unwelcome morality. Every turn of her life cradled in fate's hands, dictating a compulsion of lies and love. A soft rustle behind a nearby curtain caught her ear. She turned just as the fabric parted slightly, revealing nothing but shadow, or someone lurking just beyond its velvet folds. "Did you see who's watching us?" Isabella asked quietly. She stepped forward into the soft, forgiving glow of a room surrendering to evening hues, not knowing if the curtain concealed a friend or foe. His silhouette stood against the canvas of midnight blue and city lights, the deliberate glow of a cigar tip betraying his presence. Isabella hesitated only a moment. She approached Lorenzo, drawn by more than curiosity, a tension between allure and caution. The room smelled faintly of amber and spice, sense of a refined world she was now a part of, yet never truly belonged. Her heart quickened with every step. Here was Lorenzo, surrounded by wealth, power, and the enigma that was his life. She was a mere interloper, yet one who carried pieces of his puzzle. As she neared, his eyes flicked up to meet hers, a storm confined behind the tranquil surface. The cool intensity of it made her heart flutter, torn between danger and attraction. She had learned to navigate this lavish labyrinth with an air of nonchalance. But their private moments often left her raw, exposed like freshly mined marble veins, traced by every intent look he gave. "There are whispers about you," Isabella said, unveiling the delicate conspiracy she felt woven around her. Lorenzo's gaze didn't falter. "Whispers are the currency of disbelief, and yet here you are, dealing in them." Her skin pricked under his scrutiny. Around them, the quiet room threatened to spill secrets. She perched on the wooden arm of a chaise lounge, feeling the cool sheen of the fabric beneath her fingers, a momentary partition between them and reality. "Tell me," he continued, tone languid, "how do you see my world now?" "As mysterious as it is intoxicating," Isabella admitted, the candid admission as dangerous as the truth she sought. The corner of his mouth lifted ever so slightly, a reluctant truce carved from their war of words. His fingers drummed an imperceptible beat upon the glass he held, a rhythmless promise. She wondered if he discerned her inner conflict, her growing sense of connection tethered not just by employment, but by the silent threads spun from their stolen glances. Yet, as drawn as she was to this enigmatic vortex, Isabella's heart remained anchored elsewhere, at home with her son's laughter echoing in her memory. Tonight, the light from the chandelier above seemed dimmer, swallowed by shadows eager to reclaim the brightness. With every tick of the ornate clock, time threatened her resolve as it slowly unraveled. Lorenzo rose, closing the space between them. "And if you had to choose?" His voice rolled gently through the air, the gravity of his question binding her to this moment. She knew not the answer. His words held weight that confounded her clarity. Yet a fragment of this life, the danger and allure, would always linger even if she left. Reflective silence hung between them, taut as anticipation. She regarded him, the depth in his eyes like a secret cathedral of all that he valued safe. With the gentle tread of unspoken affection, their silent communion threatened to tear the surface off everything that was safely hidden. But the moment was interrupted. A soft knock echoed across the room. Both turned, Lorenzo's expression shifting from contemplation to alertness. "Enter," he commanded, his voice reverting to that of a guarding titan. A crimson-clad woman stepped in, her presence disrupting the delicate equilibrium, yet adding to the tension's crescendo. "Lorenzo," she addressed, her tone as crisp as the fresh Florence air that seeped through the slightly ajar window. Isabella noticed the same emerald gleam around the woman's neck that glittered like Lorenzo's eyes when they caught the light, binding them by more than lineage or alliance. "There's been a development," the woman said, her eyes briefly flicking to Isabella before returning to Lorenzo. "One involving Ariana." A chill skated down Isabella's spine, pooling like icy water at her feet. Her sister's fate in their clutches was a notion she could scarcely hold. Perturbation morphed the room's mood from tense anticipation to fraught expectation. Lorenzo regarded Isabella briefly, the meaning in his gaze clear. Whatever happened next, she was already caught in the intricate tapestry. His voice, as dark and rich as the wood-paneled walls around them, filled the space with foreboding. "Thank you, Marcella," Lorenzo said, a veil of stoic calm descending over his emotions. Isabella felt the pull of something greater than herself urging her to speak. What happened to her, Lorenzo? The silence that followed was nearly deafening, punctuated by her heart's frantic drumming within her chest. Lorenzo turned to face her, his demeanor a gentle entreaty cloaked in armor. "A detail has shifted in the game we play. Move less expected." Isabella's breath caught. Turn of fate she hadn't predicted, much like the sudden, inevitable fall of a house of cards. "Your sister is closer to the edge of our world than you know," he continued, "and her ties to us deeper than surface shows." Her mind reeled, the room itself seemed to tighten around her as the weight of her sister's involvement pressed upon her shoulders, a vestment heavy with the excess of untold truths. Marcella took her leave, dissolving into the darkened halls beyond the doorway, her message lingering. Lorenzo and Isabella stood like echoes tethered in a temporal drift of secrets precariously balanced upon edges too sharp to grasp. "Help me," Isabella implored softly, her voice infused with a courage she didn't fully possess. Lorenzo nodded, a slight tilt, promising solidarity. An unsteady syllable fell from his lips. "Tomorrow." The tone held a mournful quality. Perceptible longing for unsaid solace. A whisper through the language of shadows rectified only by time. And as he turned away, Isabella's heart ached from absence and revelation. The future trembling within grasp, yet obscured beyond a veil sewn from whispers. Through her pulse and fire, one truth remained. Her world now pivoted upon a single obscured orbit. The sudden echo of footsteps in the snow-laden corridor was the only sound, reminding her that the night was far from over. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Uncertainty laced with growing dread clung to the room like smoke. The night held its breath, every shadow in Lorenzo's drawing room pregnant with possibility. A dark silhouette stepped into the pale moonlight, filtering through the ample windows, and Isabella's nerves crackled with tension, like an overdrawn piano wire poised to snap. "You'll regret everything, Lorenzo," sneered the figure, voice silky with menace. The room bristled with the echo of threats unspoken, promises unsaid. Isabella watched from the cover of obscurity, a silent specter entwined in an escalating drama she barely comprehended, but felt profoundly. The man's face, half concealed by shadow, was known to her. A rival boss with a reputation as sharp as the stiletto tucked in his belt, notorious for his ruthlessness. A chill crept up Isabella's spine as she absorbed the breadth of Lorenzo's world, a dangerous aura lingering in corners where danger loved to hide. Lorenzo stood impervious, carved from stone, unfazed by the malicious declaration. "I'd advise you to tread wisely," Lorenzo returned, his voice as calm as an unmoved sea. Isabella, caught between curiosity and fear, inhaled the charged atmosphere, gunpowder and expensive cigar smoke curling into a tapestry around them, layer by layer building the tension. The visitor canted his head toward Isabella's cloaked presence, a mirthless smile twisting his lips. "We have more guests than I was led to believe." She emerged from the shadows, enveloped in fabric and light, carrying within her the fragile alchemy of suspense and truth. Her mind flicked to the photograph hidden in Marco's room, each face a thread tied to her own destiny, waiting to unravel like a skein at the touch of a needle. Just then, Lorenzo's cold gaze slid to her like the whisper of a silk ribbon. "This is no place for you," he murmured, with a hint of possessive concern that stirred something deep within her. But Isabella wouldn't walk away. Not now, when her sister's fate lingered like the chiming echo of a cathedral bell. She felt the weight of her choice like a velvet chain, one link tangled in the past, the rest trailing out into the unknown. Tension tightened the atmosphere, weaving between them with electric force as Isabella forced herself into the momentous declaration of resolve flashing in her eyes. "If it involves my sister, I should hear it," she spoke, the authority in her voice newly minted. A flicker of something, admiration, respect, challenge lit in Lorenzo's eyes, momentarily softening his countenance beside the fireplace's flickering flame. The stranger's laugh slithered between them, a dark ribbon. "Family," he hissed, the word twisting in his mouth. With a nod to her courage or perhaps her foolishness, Lorenzo offered nothing more than a nod of assent, but the undercurrent told of promised allegiance. The guest shrugged, conceding the round with grace. I wouldn't want to keep such matters away from dear kin. His words bit with veiled irony, yet Lorenzo's hand had already moved to shield her from any verbal onslaught that dared overstep the mark. Enough, Lorenzo cut in, authority sewn into the syllables, commanding instant obedience. A fragile silence fell, clumsy in its suddenness, but settling like dust upon a room brimming with history. I suggest your next actions be more considered, Lorenzo advised, the words a gentle but firm rebuke. The visitor's smile flagged, conceding the subtle chess game Lorenzo orchestrated with every exchange, every nuance. A narrative written in subtext captured whispers, angles working beneath the surface. In the aftermath of the face-off, the outsider departed, leaving the room colder, more acute with reality pressing in like a storm. Lorenzo's gaze held her, an unspoken dialogue mingling in the air. Moments stretched, rich with insights that passed wordlessly between them like old friends might. You shouldn't have been here. A simple truth it was, thundering in the vacuum. But Isabella's reply was metered, singular in its declaration. I must know for their sake. His face softened, not in vulnerability but clarity, a rare breeze of sincerity gusting through the brooding facade. Isabella realized a momentous shift was occurring, more vital than she'd known. Within this grandiose game of power and secrecy, she had unearthed a bridge to her own strengths, all hidden within. The evening descended with its collective secrets bound in twilight's cloak, pulling at threads that burgeoned with complexity and intrigue. Isabella exited the echoing grandeur of the room, her footsteps guided by resolve amid uncertainties shaped like promises. Quiet overtures of piano notes drifted from distant chambers, weaving into the narrative's fragile fabric. Her thoughts unfurled in the binding shadows. Fate had placed her here, and it was up to her to write the next line. As she ventured into the dim corridor, silence fell a stark reminder of the tenuous safety glowing like embers amid the darkness. Footsteps moaned faintly over drafty floorboards, someone drawn to the villa's ghostly embrace. And then a sound, haunting in its simplicity, a music box's melody floating through the air. Isabella paused, each note a promise, a warning. Life has a way of changing all promises you think are certain, Lorenzo said, appearing like a wraith beside her. The resonance of his words folded a new layer into her existence, etching the profound truth into her reality. As she moved onwards, the specter of something unseen lingered in those notes that traced the walls around her, scripting echoes that would reach far ahead. The mansion's vastness unspooled before her, shadow-wrapped journey within a puzzle yet unsolved, drawn by invisible threads toward an inevitable destination. Isabella's resolve wrapped her with strength akin to steel, recognition simmering her pulse to the rhythm Lorenzo had just reminded her. And there it was, a resolution steeped in longing, a delicate monologue of courage echoing in time. Loyalty is thicker than blood, Lorenzo, she whispered, the words overrun with unyielding conviction, confirming their shared path. The single soft footfall following was not hers. You're not supposed to be here, sang a small voice, piercing the midnight stillness. Isabella's breath snagged in her chest. Her eyes swept to the balcony, searching for the source, yet only the drapery moved in the whispering breeze. She tightened her grip on reality, feeling the cold marble floor beneath her feet as a tangible anchor in the swirling chaos. For a moment, the room felt like a glass jar, the world outside sealed away. Every echo seemed amplified, the delicate ticking of an old clock, a distant rustle outside, and the breathing of the villa itself a sound too ancient to silence. It was Marco, emerging with timid yet unwavering determination from behind the cascading folds of a velvet curtain. Shadows wrapped around him tightly, as if reluctant to relinquish their hold on his small frame. Why are you out of bed? Isabella whispered, her voice holding a sternness laced with unspoken affection. Her pulse quickened, both warning and protective instinct. They're fighting out there, Marco confessed, wide eyes flicking towards the window where the night guarded its secrets closely. It makes the stars shake, he added, his childlike logic as beautifully fragile as crystal. Isabella's heart echoed a sudden, searing reminder of the innocence that lived despite the sinister shadows moving around them. He thinks he can make them stop, Marco continued, his gaze drifting across the room's towering grandeur, settling where moonlight pooled languidly at Lorenzo's feet. A memory resurfaced, the kind that grips one's heart with nostalgic melancholy. Marco on her lap, gently rocking while outside the world pursued its relentless path. Come here, she beckoned gently. Her eyes softened, the hardened shell she wore melting, exposing the vulnerability beneath like sunlight catching a Dulaudin web. As he approached, the fragrance of lavender filled the air, an unusual yet comforting scent she associated with safety and gentler times, something she secretly imagined her late mother would have carried. Between the expectant tension of the villa and the tender intricacies of her charge, Isabella felt more the role of a sentry than a nanny. The weight of truth pressed at the edges of her conscience, a soft yet unyielding prodding to act. In a silent exchange, Isabella and Marco found solace, their shared warmth momentarily warding off the chill of unanswered questions. Do you think they'll be okay? Marco asked suddenly, his voice small yet imbued with hope that gnawed at her composure. They'll be okay, Isabella assured, drawing from a well of faith she didn't possess just to convince him, and maybe herself. But her mind wandered back to Lorenzo, whose inexplicable aura lingered here, even in his absence. It was as though his presence gave weight to everything. Objects seemed heavier, thoughts, by reflex, more burdened. She stood, her reflection caught in the panel of the aged window, a figure trapped between her own past and a future unspoken. Defined by choices she sensed unraveling, poised between salvation and despair. A muffled shout outside pulled her from the depths, causing her to turn sharply. The sound fragmented the heavy silence, predictably unsettling, yet commanding attention. They're here, Marco whispered, eyes wide, comprehension dawning, mixed with fear. Outside, the moon cast everything in an ethereal sheen. Figures moved on the periphery, the world outside weaving into a tapestry of half-lit mystery blending seamlessly into shadowed animation inside. Isabella pressed herself to the cool pains to see, ignoring the frostbite of fear nipping at her heart. Her own breath fogged the glass, momentarily obscuring shadows that stretched like fingers reaching out to claim the night. Out of view, Isabella's mind traced familiar lines, the choices that had led her here, the secrets and questions. 1,000 little silences welling up into those voids, all swirling past her like streaks of distant comets. And then there it was, the revelation, steeped in a wash of momentary clarity. A whisper in her tone, echoing the depth of her bond with Lorenzo. Reflections of a newer reality, perhaps deeply entwined with how their fates would align. She turned to confront Marco, whose gaze had swung back to Hera, shared silence acknowledging truths beyond their words, an unsaid vow of enduring connection between them. Without another word, Isabella swept past him, urgency and determination forming calcified bonds, heading towards where Lorenzo navigated the evolving dilemma that felt more personal with each locked door she passed. The villa around her unfolded grandiose and silent like a fading painting, the opulence all too transparent once the night revealed its secrets with heart-thudding persistence. Isabella halted as her footfalls echoed down the corridor, her next move suspended between necessity and spine-tingling apprehension. One last echo whispered through the vaulted passage, the sound of footsteps not her own, arriving to tell a story that threatened to change everything. And then the faint, unmistakable clink of metal against marble reverberated around her. Isabella faced the dawn of realization as it swept over her existence, a tangle of emotion, foreboding, love, and uncertainty, until the shadow at the end of the hall solidified into something undeniable. The storm outside lashed violently against the stone walls of the Vivaldi mansion, as if nature itself was warning of the upheaval within. Isabella stood amidst the shadows of that grandiose hallway, feeling the weight of the past and present converge. The darkness around her seemed to whisper with the voices of those who had come before, binding time and secrets beneath its flickering chandeliers. A photograph flickered in her mind, Ariana, Lorenzo, and a child who wasn't Marco, but could be. She hadn't considered the depths of family ties or the magnitude of their unyielding demand for loyalty. Isabella Romano had been a name whispered among the Florence art circles, full of admiration once. Now she was merely a ghost of that life of mother, enduring sweat and scrim of economic desperation. Collectors once hung on her every insight. Now bills hooked at her ankles, dragging her into an abyss of mundane struggle. Yet standing on the cold Spanish tiles of Lorenzo's lair, she felt a revival, promise of resurgence carefully hidden under the guilt of power and mystery. A sudden crash reverberated through the hall, snapping her into the present. Isabella spun around to face the source, an overturned vase, shards scattered like a mosaic over the polished floor. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in the sartorial elegance of dangerous intent. It was Nikolai, Lorenzo's rival, an age-old adversary to the Vivaldis. The blade glinted malevolently in his hand. "This ends tonight," Nikolai declared, eyes narrowed with intent, absorbed from years of feuding blood. Isabella's heart pounded a furious staccato. She had been underestimated, discounted to the periphery of this grand conflict. But what Nikolai failed to see, what everyone failed to anticipate, was her unwavering resolve. Marking her stance, she stood tall. "You think to write endings you've barely begun to understand." Her words held a weight honed through loss and unyielding determination. Nikolai sneered, a look born from years of strategic misdirection. Yet she noticed the slight tilt of his wrist, a tell that spoke to his uncertainty. "There's more than rivalry between families," Isabella continued, her voice cutting through the tension like a northern wind. "The Vivaldis are not so easily undone. Neither am I." A hush descended, gilding the tension with dire suspense. Isabella had seen paintings convey the sweep of emotions with nothing more than a dash of red or a string of lines. Words, she found, held their own power when cast like spells. Nikolai's gaze flickered toward the shadows pulling at the hallway entrance. Lorenzo's figure emerged as if born from the walls, cloaked in presence and command. "Isabella," he began, his voice a rich, rolling thunder betraying both reassurance and warning. He cast a dark glance at Nikolai. "I see we have a guest." Nikolai straightened, blade in hand. "A guest bringing revelations, Lorenzo. Your reign hangs by a singular thread." Lorenzo's laugh was low, devastatingly assured. "When has a thread not been enough for trenches of loyalty stronger than yours?" Isabella watched the exchange, her own allegiances requiring no confirmation. She stepped forward, slicing through the danger-laden room with little regard for tradition or threat. The moon mingled with baccarat crystal glimmers, illuminating this game beyond comprehension. "I could never understand men obsessed with endings," she said, her voice trailing like smoky incantations. "It's the journey and the curative potential within that defines strength." Her focus shifted to Lorenzo, a new resolve manifesting in her demeanor. The past woven into the present, the history, dances of duplicity, a deeper commitment, unfurling depths only Lorenzo had touched. Amidst the incendiary exchange of words, Nikolai's deflection wavered in opportunity, as volatile as the air around them. With Lorenzo's customary nod, reserved for truths voiced within necessary strength, Isabella boldly positioned herself between them. Nikolai recoiled momentarily, the blade's shimmer barely able to halt the inevitability Isabella had already embraced. "There's more strength in a shared belief than solitary ambition," she echoed. A sudden noise erupted outside the villa, echoing within the marble corridors, new presences confirming an ill-timed engagement wrapping around them. Isabella shifted, eyes trailing towards the unseen movement woven into the villa's rhythm. Nikolai froze, attention torn between the clash outside and the two occupants who dared challenge his intent with simplicity beyond his complicated resolve. Another crash followed, a glass panel, judging heaven and earth shattered by the untimely past, eager to reclaim its music. Within the charge of converging futures, beyond the malice reflected in Nikolai's eyes, Isabella felt Lorenzo's steadfast resolve. He angled close, the brush of his Honda whisper of silent camaraderie. "What transpires here, Isabella? This is a life's crossing." His words wove into her like lanthorns within a ship's mast, illuminating the way. There was no turning back from convictions that brought her from there to hear, for once underestimated by a world contained in gilded galleries and whispers behind extravagant curtains. She was no longer passive in the unfolding narrative. She was force, bearer, and fulcrum. Lorenzo, Nikolai dared a conclusion. The response was certainly weighted. It reverberated within Villa halls and time stretching beyond its finite reach. Understand this. Lorenzo's voice carried a resonance tightly bound, a symphony undefeated among the whispers of time. Endings here cease to exist. That singular truth encapsulated a singular notion. Change emanated with emboldened heart's resolve. As forces gathered beyond the villa's expansive threshold, where truth still warred with entrenched fiction, new dawn breathed, fully beyond the clashing edge of Florence's enduring golden light. Isabella's hand, a testament to newly defined purpose and growing strength, brushed Lorenzo's in solidaristic grace. The lingering motif whispered into the dwelling heart of yet unrealized realities. Wave not yet complete, waiting to be drawn. From behind them both and all others gathered, the soundless narrative shifted, unseen new figure emerging. The instant was frozen, memorable, imbued with purpose. A shadow more eloquent than echoed verse paused beyond Henrietta's connecting reflection, a change anchored beyond perception. It isn't over yet, Lorenzo murmured definitively. The portrait waits to be completed. In the dim glow of early morning, as the first blush of dawn strained to touch the intricate carvings of the Vivaldi mansion, Isabella stood poised but conflicted at the precipice of revelation. She's closer than you think, whispered Lorenzo, his voice a gentle yet serious cadence against the dim backdrop. Isabella's pulse quickened. Her sister Ariana's name was a frequent specter in the conversations cloaked in secrecy, yet ever evasive in their solid truths. The air around her buzzed with subdued energy, as if every unsung rumor and veiled secret held a tangible breath waiting to exhale. At one time in a life positioned at civilization's cultural nerve, Isabella stood triumphantly amid canvases and echoes of artificionado whispers. Her once intricate existence had simplified into a palette of necessity and raw survival, with her role as Marco's protector forming as both a priority and an unsolved puzzle. Marco's well-being was not questioned so much as enshrined. A symbol of legacy, his bond with Isabella was unique, birthed from an understanding beyond that of care and duty. The afternoon unfolded with brewing unease. Surrounded by wealth that once beckoned with unspoken allure but now seemed suffocating, Isabella glimpsed the portrait painted in Lorenzo's confident stride, a telling of his steadfastness. "I need the truth, Lorenzo," Isabella demanded, her voice a note sharper than safety would suggest. The dining room's opulence felt heavy around them, adorned with silver that caught light in ghostly gestures. Crisis simmered silently beneath the surface as Lorenzo's unyielding silence cloaked the room. The reverberations of that silence echoed, like the aftershocks of a seismic revelation waiting to redefy belief. And then he spoke, voice like the grind of shifting earth. "Ariana chose this path among shadows. She's woven deeply into the fabric of our world. But so are you, perhaps unknowingly." Shock creased into confusion as Isabella weighed the implications. Her sister was not missing. She had been moving through the same subterranean currents, absorbed into a world Isabella could only touch the surface of. Even the thought of Ariana's involvement felt like a wintry gust, stripping any illusion Isabella could hesitate under. Could the mystery, the guilt, and the longing she carried shift under this new clarity? The escalation twisted onward through the following days, a crescendo of challenges testing every tether holding her toward her sister's truth. What she saw, the whispers Lorenzo directed, the unwieldy influence beneath the glamour, gnawed at her resolve. In quieter moments, when Marco's uninhibited laughter painted the mansion with colors from which escape was momentarily possible, Isabella remembered. Voices of past potential, the unceasing drum of art critiques, mingled with her original love for restoration, harmonizing with her current plight. But an unseen tether remained between Isabella and the world Ariana now haunted. Like the slowly unfurling leaf of a dream, her faith in navigating a maze grown strange and inexorable, resilient in a darkness that sought to intimidate. One evening, as the overcast hues dabbled flecks of rain against the windows, Isabella stumbled upon her revelation wrapped in the guise of a small, forgotten chest. It was buried inside the library's hearth, an unconscious stealth of protection behind heavy books lined with intelligent dust, their papyrus skin pale and secrets buried. It was not treasure, but knowledge. Letters filled with Ariana's unmistakable script mixed with an urgency that belied the devotion. Here, Ariana wove her tapestry of connection, a delicate acknowledgement of Isabella's veracity to solve the puzzle she represented in the face of looming threats. The realization was vivid as a Van Gogh vibrancy, illuminating Isabella's vision through the burdens that lay in icy weight. A rendezvous became obligatory, a deferred recognition immediately necessary. The climax rushed over her by surprise, a vulnerability and immediacy seizing her with its unequivocal grasp. Isabella exchanged vantage points with Lorenzo, every word, every intention, deliberate, a dance mastered over time's relentless sway. When at last they spoke beneath the still stars, both now fully participant instead of spectators, it was simple honesty that tethered their hands no longer just metaphorically and with tentative resolve. "We must find her," Lorenzo stated, certainty wedged in the silence between. And as Isabella's heart joined in comprehension, the bond they shared bloomed anew bound by purpose, rather than circumstance. Resolution mingled with a bittersweet note, resonating through spaces once haunted by unknowing. Love, stronger than shadow, coalesced as both barrier and bridge. What we feared was not rejection, but the unknown, Isabella mused, visions of Ariana's letters and the weight of truth grounding her resolve. Yet not every morning or mystery demanded the breadth of night's true perception. A new dawn gleamed uncertain. Final truths not yet manifest, but promised in subsequent breaths. And as vision dried the trembling edges of the rain-soaked chaos, Isabella felt Lorenzo grip her hand tighter, secure in the bond they'd come to foster. But destiny rather than fate breathed anew with altering inevitability, a challenge unending, unfolding. Thus the mansion settled around them, whispers sealing conspiring fates, unresolved truths ready to claim more space at a moment's notice. From outside the door, a shadow shifted ominously, waiting. The ominous silence was shattered by a phone ringing, its persistent tone echoing through the dimly lit room, penetrating the heavy air like a shard of glass. Lorenzo, seated and pensive, glanced at the clock. The thin hand ticked past the quarter hour, each second a countdown to a confrontation that could unravel the delicate balance they had carefully crafted. Isabella stood at the threshold of the room, where shadows blended with the early light filtering weakly through embroidered curtains. She hesitated only a moment before stepping fully into the space, her presence met with neither surprise nor dismissal, but a strange amalgam of expectation and inevitability. In the contrasting worlds they navigated, Isabella found herself a curious mixture of resolve and vulnerability. Her unique brand of quiet elegance was sharpened by the fierce, unyielding devotion she held for those she loved, often underestimated amidst the lethal elegance of the underworld. "She sent me this," Isabella murmured, eyes cast down at the envelope she'd been clutching. The stationery was starkly unadorned, save for the initial A in elegant script. It was her sister Ariana's handwriting, looping phrases and cryptic messages scribbled across the pages. It was a legacy of loyalty draped across danger and love. "They are closing in," Isabella continued, her voice threaded with sincerity and dread. "We cannot distance ourselves from this any longer." Lorenzo's attention sharpened, a gaze like steel drawing across her form with focused intensity as he considered the web woven into each of Ariana's whispered words. The room seemed suspended in time, filled with the lingering aroma of espresso and the faint undertone of cigar smoke, distinctly Lorenzo, captured in the air they shared. Every tableau within the mansion felt a witness, portraits spectating the suffusion of tension bound together by the ties of family and fate. A bruise of silence fell between them, laden with the weight of unspoken truths and the ghost of choices not yet made. Lorenzo stood, his shadow a steady anchor as the first light of dawn slipped over his form, raw determination framing every edge. "There's a storm approaching, Isabella," he said finally, voice a quiet storm itself. "And there are some truths we cannot hide from each other. Not anymore." As if on cue, a faint pattering marked the sky giving way to its tears, droplets tapping rhythm on the broad stones edging the villa, as if divulging secrets only the earth beneath could interpret. The challenge unfurled with astonishing clarity, released from the bottle it had been confined to for far too long. Isabella traced the window's frost-touched outline with a light finger, her resolve undiminished, bolstered under Lorenzo's unwavering scrutiny. She turned, articulating the plan that had formed like a painting in her mind's eye. A vision, carefully unspooled from thought to resolve. "We go to the vineyard," she suggested, remembering the place where secrets could ferment in peace, grounded away from prying eyes. Ariana wrote that she knew a way, a path revealed when trust is abandoned. Lorenzo nodded, each wave of uncertainty navigated with his calculated focus that had borne them both this far. The vineyard, a sanctuary of entwined vines and whispered allegiances, a piece of their heritage, deeply entrenched in lore and possibility. Shadows deepened their pact, forged from glances charged with implications that towered above the careful steps Isabella had taken into this layered conspiracy. Still her spirit stitched with resilience, poised to dwell within these truths unplumbed. As the world slipped through the hours they monitored from afar, a chilling realization settled. Against forces like Nikolai's, they'd need all the protection and strategy Ariana's insight could afford them. This conspiratorial web, now expansive beyond comprehension, held the Vivaldi legacy poised at the edge of reckoning. The hours mirrored gravity and weight, each second infused with urgency, blending with the metal undertones of Lorenzo's armored resolve. And amidst it lay the shared promise between them, the tether of Ariana's intentions weaving into the once fractured fabric they strived to sew together. Each preparatory moment, each pause in breath, was a declaration of resistance. Isabella, pinned under the growing awareness of their connected fates, felt the encompassing rush of destiny cresting upon the horizon. The cry of a bird, sharp and startling, sliced through their intertwined thoughts, marking time's passage. Isabella took a breath, grounding herself within the loyal swell, ready to shelter Marco in innocence as well as trust. As they approached the threshold leading to their escape, past defensive corridors and the familiar cadence of history lurking, Isabella felt the gravity of their alliance flow through her limbs, steadying what lay ahead. Once more into the breach, Lorenzo murmured, voice laced with determined vulnerability. Isabella nodded, a girl-grown woman in the refracted truth of that moment, standing tall as her soul wrote its own vows upon the unyielding weight of their shared journey. With the quiet pride of one unyielding, Isabella gathered the letters into her hands like a totem of all they must protect. The silence pulsed with the beating of a deeper purpose, no longer alone. A shadow fell upon them, stark and undeniable, reaching from a realm not yet unveiled. It whispered a promise of immediate change, a testament of destiny's hand unwavering in its path. "Those who seek shall find," she whispered into the resolute space, swapping soft fears for irreversible resolve. The shadow beyond the window thickened, a harbinger against the slow-rising dawn, the storm awaiting the unwritten chapter of all that remained to be told. The sound of heavy boots pacing in rhythm with the grandfather clock drew Isabella's attention. Marco had disappeared, much like he always did when tensions ran too high and adult conversations teetered on disclosures children should never hear. "You're not safe here," Isabella whispered to herself, as much as she questioned the ornate walls surrounding her with a glance too critical, filled with incredulity at their unyielding silence. The air crackled with a weight untold, as if the very molecules were on edge, colliding in perpetual disturbance. Lorenzo's shadow stretched beyond the doorway, grim, monochrome, flickering as he entered the room where he found her, perched upon the corner of an elaborate chaise. "I've seen these storms end differently." His words were a prelude, a premonition beneath the strange warmth of his gaze, offering reassurance in a world where truth sought places to hide. His silence spun into a cryptic narrative whispering beneath the surface where webs of familial allegiance threatened like roots determined to fracture born-in foundations. If Lorenzo Vivaldi had ever allowed the world a glimpse beyond his ruthless exterior, Isabella's equity within that gaze was her intrigue, a riddle wrapped in warmth and danger. She had felt underestimated too often, living on the brink where maternal instincts cast shadows too large for one woman to ignore, much less manage on her own. Amidst the whispering tension interspersed with shadows darting beyond every known edge, she had decided survival's guardian held deeper truths than acceptance. Isabella, his voice soft and concerned, possibly vulnerable, veiling the concealed gambit beneath their partnership, called her back from musings thick as the shroud coating the wet Florence night. A thought continued to gnaw at her consciousness, something beyond containment and often frosted with chills birthed in moments barely passing as seconds embraced eternity. Burgeoning revelation was now God's gift, tangled within a precarious council assembled to redirect their respective paths, guided by Ariana's letters still folded, left untouched upon the smooth silken expanse of shared fears. Looming questions magnified by impending realities circled them with inquisitive prods, as if the very act of questioning sought out retracting paths just to confirm their doubts. Stepping back from thought's ledge, Isabella approached the conclusion warily. Will she understand? It was hardly a whisper, muted by the scarce lever her spirit proffered to hold it aloft. She will because you speak her language, the language of family handed down not just in blood, but in choice, Lorenzo replied, the candor threatening something close to trust between the dissenting walls. His vocation wrapped her tighter than exploratory vines. Artistry was magic rendered comprehensible, amidst human extremes where loss painted stark relief into legacy's anticipating shadow. Their plan laid bare like notes promising renewal if the ear only listened, stretching a sail precariously positioned to catch it before it drift away. During ascent, secrets demanded spilling like dusk embracing glassy riverbanks, wishing to part water's veil for perspective on either side. Within Lorenzo, there thrived a tempest quieter than raging where narratives disguised the drama between dances shared beyond understanding's reach. In his perception, Isabella was both muse and mariner, promising respite while simultaneously demanding answers to history's repetitive rhythm. Promise me, he began, pausing to gather air laden with the pressing gravity of prospects. Promise you will keep Marco safe. She stilled, heart a vessel finely crafted, yet audibly threatening to betray when wholly possessed by the depths of fervor. With everything I have, she answered, a pledge echoing with steel as words hung suspended beneath stars etched while twilight prepared to surrender them. Footsteps arched beneath low ceilings. Lorenzo joined her in tandem motion towards that place where clarity's whispered truths awaited, masked by time's fraught journey toward reconciliation. Her voice sought embodiment, mingling with evening's litany, reaching fine tensile threads, straining, poised upon the crest of divining. Lorenzo paused briefly just beyond threshold light, consumed within proximity, exposing where fears mused. Nearby, Marco was wisely enveloped within spell's protective grasp, aware without awareness and nurtured through hardship's scope, innocent despite proximity. Beyond hallways carved from legacy's intention, betrayals crouched ready, malicious spirits held captive within airless estate lofts. Outside awaited the graveyard of revelation, where time's twisting threads promised entangled salvation and escape's delivery. Symbols ran rampant through the asylum of ghost's former escape, embroidered with madness's understanding. Arias intensifying through crescendo's fevered clutch, beckoned warning all climax's truth parading, within drunk night's fathomless expanse. Ready? Isabella asked, anticipation woven frantic beneath steely poise framed for Lorenzo just beyond waking dusk's promise. He held choices burdened there a caretaker in cohorts for destiny, tied by framed alibis' unoriginal insistence. She met his glance, her presence resolute from landscapes traversed, resilient, resistant, where alternative equanimity offered no purchase. Choice awoke forgiving sunrise allure below history's languid script, forgotten though scorned, realigning visions through simple notices. To Isabella, each prelude offered whispers unspoken, an arch through silence's knowing passage, yearning beneath silent climax truly in view. She turned suddenly as Lorenzo stilled and queried the horizon. Is that the end? The question froze the frame, arrested in twilight's poised shadow building, crescendo just beyond dawn's nascent edge. It was both scene and promise as anticipation extended threads beyond understanding's tangible comprehension, marking time before setting contemporary shadows ablaze. Their summons, foretold in fate's welcoming arms, awaited within memory's ground, finally sung in long surrendering formality. For within every shadow lay boldness unbridled, as the early breeze cooled gestures too defined for words alone's expression. Bathed under riparian moon's melancholy arch, secrets born from the river's recesses released in dreamy silence, stretched amid crystal spume. And when morning converged with fate's breath knocking to demand its entrance, final cloaks unspun, laid bare and fractured beneath almanac sky's plaintive sigh, gentler dreams cast forth with awakening from memory's inevitable lids. "Are you?" he asked. From echo's soft retort burr, resolution hovered, seeking dawn's rising domain. The room glowed in the golden light of early morning, casting reflections like a shimmering painting across the polished floors and silk wallpaper. Isabella stood at the tall window, watching as dawn unfurled its gentle, pink fingers over the sprawling grounds of the Vivaldi estate. Despite being nestled within luxury, she felt the tug of inevitability, like a delicate string wrapped around her heart, threatening to unravel at the slightest provocation. Her hand gripped the sill, cool and reassuring beneath her palm, as memories of last night filtered through her mind, heavy with intentions and decisions yet to be realized. Marco remained unseen, tucked away in the protective embrace of dreams, oblivious to the dark currents swirling around the family woven from centuries of secrecy and quiet power. Lorenzo approached her silently as if he'd emerged from the shadows themselves. His presence felt like the revelation of past storms, an intricate mix of strength and solemnity, wrapped in a well-fitted suit that promised both refuge and risk. "You barely slept, Isabella," he noted, his voice a gentle baritone that resonated with familiarity. She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the tension brewed from secrets waiting to surface. "How can I, with Ariana's words etched into my thoughts, like a riddle only fate can resolve?" Lorenzo moved closer, the unmistakable scent of his cologne mingling with the crisp morning air as it snaked in from the slightly ajar balcony. His gaze, a steady horizon unwavering in its depth, met hers. "Her letters are a compass," he offered almost reverently. "Together, we chart the course they've set for us, wherever it leads." A chill scudded along Isabella's skin despite the growing warmth of the room, carrying with it the weight of expectation. She felt an unspoken pressure settle upon her shoulders, the silhouette of her sister's presence lingering at the periphery of reality. Just then, the door to the study creaked open. Marcella entered, her demeanor as composed as ever, though Isabella couldn't help but notice a slight tension in her stance, a heaviness veiled beneath a mask of decorum. "There's something you need to know," Marcella began, her voice tight with urgency. "It concerns Nikolai and the alliances threading through our past." Isabella's heart raced, the name pulling a visceral reaction from her Gutta reminder that danger lurked at the edges of every decision and fleeting peace was only an illusion. Lorenzo stiffened, his expression darkening like a gathering storm. "What has he done?" Marcella laid a folder on the desk, spreading its contents with precision. Photographs, documents, pieces of a puzzle that demanded acknowledgement. Just as Isabella's search for her sister reached its climax. "He's moving against us." The vineyard meeting was a deception, an ambush disguised as diplomacy. The room seemed to tilt on itself, mirroring Isabella's internal struggle as she fought to process the implications, the betrayal twisting like a knife between ribs. "Then we must confront this, now," Lorenzo decided, a fierce resolve echoing through his words. "But Ariana," Isabella's voice faltered, her mind flickering through images of bond and betrayal, the delicate dance of loyalty stretched thin over secrets and silencers. "Her path intertwines with ours. We move together, Isabella, or not at all," Lorenzo declared, extending a hand that felt like a lifeline aimed to steady her course. The floor beneath them seemed to hum with the tension of unspoken truths, secrets realized too late. The photographs staring up at them spoke of entanglements too complex for severance, realities too ingrained to be undone. Isabella's thoughts burned with fierce determination, fueled by a desire to mend fractured ties, to seal the fissures that threatened to swallow their whispered ambitions whole. "At dawn's light we stand at the crossroads," she murmured, her voice barely audible, a vow folded into a constant promise. "We must act before the chorus of our past overwhelms us." Lorenzo nodded, the weight of decisions yet to be made stark in his eyes. Together, then, we have no choice but forward. Isabella gathered the letters from the table, pressing them close to her heart as if they held the key to the future they both desired but feared. Outside, the world was awash in the soft symphony of awakening life, the gentle hum of bees in the garden's blooms, the quiet rustle of leaves whispering ancient secrets to the wind. As they moved to join the dance orchestrated by destiny and danger, Isabella felt the faint flicker of hope reignite a flame that refused to be dimmed by shadows or secret compacts. But amid the orchestrated calm, the brewing ferocity of an uprising storm loomed like a specter, daring them to misstep, to falter in their shared conviction. The door swung shut behind them, sealing their resolve, a finite line drawn at the edge of morning's new promise. Isabella's heart echoed the rhythm of change, the notes of an unfinished melody poised for crescendo. And in the silence, weighted with what remained unsaid, there lay the truth, immediate, palpable, insatiable in its demand to be known. Together they stepped into the burgeoning day, unknowingly trailing the afterimage of a defiant future not yet written, treading lightly over the fracture lines of the stories yet untold. As the pathway before them stretched and twisted into the horizon, Isabella could almost hear Ariana's voice on the wind, a soft promise caught in the fleeting glint of the morning sun. "It isn't over," it seemed to whisper, a haunting echo drawing them irreversibly toward what lingered just beyond the scope of perception. A scarlet drop blossomed on the pale marble floor, unfurling slowly like a bloom of delicate ink and water. Isabella's world paused, each heartbeat synchronizing with the near, imperceptible whispers of destiny pressing insistently against her skin. In that opulent library, amidst the smell of Italian leather and old paper, time seemed to stretch and bend around her. The weight of the universe pressed down, urging her to see past the immediate chaos and discover the truth hidden behind the heavy brocade of Vivaldi's secrecy. A sudden shattering echoed fiercely through the hall, breaking the silence with a violent punctuation. Lorenzo's face was a study in calmness turned predator alert, yet Isabella saw unmistakable concern flash briefly in his eyes. "Stay here," he commanded, authority in his tone undiminished even as uncertainty rattled beneath. Before she could respond, Lorenzo disappeared into the shadows, his presence still lingering like cigar smoke mingled with the morning's fresh notes. Alone once more, Isabella wavered, the pulse of fear and curiosity warring beneath her skin, siren song leading her deeper, binding her tighter to an unfolding narrative. Their world had closed around them like jasmine tendrils, twisting within the night, as streets outside began to hum with life. Outside whispered a sanctuary yet unseen, and yet she felt chained to the fate unwinding within these walls. She turned sharply at the sound of footsteps, a hesitancy wrapped in a quick shuffle. Marco stood there, wide-eyed and clutching a battered teddy bear, innocence personified amidst treacherous tides. "I heard loud voices," he muttered, small words slipping into the somber air. Isabella knelt, bringing herself to his level, her heart tethered fiercely to this tiny, fragile hope in the storm. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice a gentle balm against the burgeoning turmoil. "We're finding a way." Yet even as she said it, Isabella wondered how long such reassurances would hold, the threads of normalcy fraying under secrets as old as Florence's cobblestones. An unexpected echo thrummed through the corridor beyond, the whisper of vibration passing through Isabella's bones like serendipitous music. Gathering Marco into her embrace, she studied the room's details, each piece imbued with new significance. Family portraits looked on silently, spectators of past victories, recording the contentious game that was now unfolding in sharp relief. There was no backing away now. Yes, Lorenzo carried weight in this underworld opera, but Isabella had realized her own presence, a cloak of strength invisibly stitched over years of silent endurance. Even in her discontent, Serenity spoke softly of the responsibility she had not asked for, yet accepted with muted grace. An hour passed, the stillness reminiscent of forgotten museums where stories hung in frames like gravity, defying puzzles. Each second added its weight until the spell broke with Lorenzo's return. His silhouette loomed, resolving into view against the tapestry of afternoon shadows, each step resolute but careful. having navigated interminable halls with urgency marked by attention to silence. There are moves within moves, he began, voice barely elevated above a whisper, yet commanding in the shared intimacy. Nikolai errs in his haste. Isabella stood, trying to gauge what this meant for them. Her relief upon Lorenzo's reappearance was tempered by an old familiar fear, one not so easily allayed by hollow assurances. As they mapped out their next steps, cautiously weaving through arrangements and alliances, both seen and unforeseen, Isabella sensed river currents beneath shadows of complexity beneath the surface of their well-staged tableau. Their paths inevitably led towards uncharted territories, where lines blurred and every choice carried the weight of legacy mixed with the blood of regret. Yet within, Isabella felt a burgeoning tide of righteous defiance, an ember brightening within. Hours later, as day's light took on the coppery hue of sunset, Lorenzo led them beyond the portico into a garden, verdant with life breathing in the embrace of twilight. The convergence of events led them back toward the vineyard, a chosen site pregnant with potential. The crescendo of conflict bound everything tighter, from whispered promises to unspoken fears. Silhouetted against the dying light, Isabella caught Lorenzo's gaze, a pool of shadows tempered in shared heat, unspoken commitments forged upon unyielding regard. As they walked, only the eternal vines witnessed the silent exchange, sentinels that heard more than they revealed, holding the intricacies of Vivaldi handshakes and whispered dealings. Lorenzo halted, grounded in the moment where astrals kissed the tinged horizon, confiding where truths found land. No matter what comes, he said, enveloping her and Marco in a glance laden with protection, we face it together. Agreement was unspoken, whispered among the rustling leaves whose dance passed threats unnoticed. They reached the vineyard's edge, the sun slipping gracefully behind ancient hills that guarded Florence like ageless watchers. Lorenzo's gaze lingered on Isabella's face, as though engraving it upon memory, as some elusive shadow lingered. The murmurous wind carried words they'd left unvoiced, closing the space between. And suddenly the sky seemed limitless, draped over lands seeded with the promises of distant stars. As Lorenzo wrapped an arm around Marco's shoulders, Isabella knew they would need more than resolution to complete this story, one that fate hadn't fully penned. Glimmers arose on the horizon, half perceivable, half imagined, beckoning stories entwined by roots delving deeper than Vadim Wood's reach. But the path was unyielding in its determination, and Isabella felt the roots of her courage entwining their destinies. In quiet strength, she turned to face the unforeseen future, bolstered by shared dreams that refused silence's shadow. "Are you ready?" Lorenzo asked, his words a tactile vision of unfolding. Her reply followed, firm and clear into the advancing dark, a declaration sandwiched between trust and the slow rise of twilight. Together we command the dawn. Yet as they moved forward, a silhouette, ghostly and unclaimed, carved its form in the border between vineyard and obscurity, a watcher poised under the inkwell night, waiting, just waiting.